Probă? 1, 2, 3, 4? Ok, bine, bine.
Good morning. So, good morning everyone. If we are ready to begin.
Vigimus,
morning. So welcome again to the 18th edition now of the International Conference on Accounting and Management Information Systems. I am Cătălin Albu and I'll be the host for today's events that we will start in this Aula Magna. It's so lovely to see so many old and new faces, old friends and new friends, and I would like to welcome every one of you here. So in the opening ceremony part, we will start with some opening remarks by people who have a connection with the conference and are close collaborators with us. So I would like to start with the person who is the originator, whose fault it is for this conference, Professor Pavel Năstase, former dean, former rector, former minister of education. So welcome, Professor.
Thank you very much, Cătălin. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure for me to participate to AMIS Conference 2023. This is a 18th conference AMIS here in our Faculty of Accounting and Management Information Systems. And it's a great honor for me as a first chair of this conference to say a few words in this opening ceremony. I remember the first edition of the conference in 2005, which first started as a national conference with international participation, in which we had as partners the universities of Cluj, Iași, and Timișoara. From then until today, the evolution of the AMIS conference has been marked by the presence of important personalities from the universities, scientific research, as well as the accounting profession at national and international level. In this context, please allow me to briefly recount some important moments that have marked this conference since the beginning. In 2004, when I was Dean of Faculty of Accounting and Management Information System, I attended the IAAER Congress in Istanbul, where I met for the first time Professor Donat Street, who was elected as a president of IAAER and who replaced Professor Alain Birlot, another friend of AMIS conference. At that Congress, it was established that IAAER members can be not only individual, but also institutions. Thus, we decided that ASE, University of Economic Studies, through the Faculty of Accounting and Management Information System, will be among the first member universities of IAAER. Later, Professor Donat Street participated in all AMIS conferences and laid the foundation for the collaboration between ASE and the Faculty of Accounting and also IAAER, which turned the AMIS conference into an international conference. Thank you very much, Professor Donat Street, for this support, for your contribution to develop this conference at international level. As I said before, the first edition was a national edition, but step by step, with the support of IAAER, our conference became more and more an international conference. Professor Donat Street contributed to the promotion of the conference in the US universities that are members of the IAAER, and those several professors from the United States of America came to the conference, among which should be mentioned Mrs. Catherine Schipper from Duke University, who contribute significantly to the evolution of the conference. Thank you very much, Catherine Schipper, for this contribution. A year later, I met Professor Alain Hodgson at the University of Amsterdam, where he was Dean of Amsterdam Business School, who responded to our invitation to come to the AMIS conference, where he was very involved, especially in the doctoral consortium and in the implementation of an agreement of cooperation between our university and the University of Amsterdam. Along with Alan Hodgson came to the AMIS conference Professor Robert Pfaff from Bond University, Australia, who was also very involved in the development of the AMIS conference in the financial field. Even today, he is a keynote speaker at our conference. In 2005, our universities with the Faculty of Accounting and Management Information System concluded a cooperation agreement with Institut National de Technique Économique et Comptable from Paris for the organization of a master degree, Comptabilité Control Audit, with a Romanian-French double degree. Based on this agreement, Professor Alain Burlot, who was the director of INTEC, together with other French professors, joined the AMIS conference. An important contribution to the development of the AMIS conference was made by our former student, Andrei Philip, from ESEG, who promote the conference in France and attract a number of participants. Thank you very much, Andrei. Andrei was also my student during his study here in our faculty. Also, based on a cooperation agreement with the Krakow University of Economics, several professors and researchers from this prestigious Polish university participate in the AMIS conference. From the very beginning of the conference, we had a constant partner named ACCA, represented here by Andreea Stanciu. Also, Andrea is a graduate of our university, who year after year brought added value to the conference. We also had a beneficial collaboration with KPMG. We started when the director of KPMG Romania was Mr. Șerban Toader, and continue later today, Mr. Holger from KPMG is present also at our conference. For many years, we have been as partner of AMIS Conference, National Association of Professional Accountants, Romanian Chamber of Financial Auditor, Body Expert of Accountants, National Association of Evaluators. Some of those previously mentioned received the honorary title of Doctor Honoris Causa of our university, Don Astrid, Catherine Schipper, Alain Hodgson, Alain Burlot, Robert Pfaff, those becoming members of university community. Going through the program of this edition of the AMIS conference, I noticed new participants that bring added value to the conference and that will carry on its tradition. I apologize if I didn't remember all the personalities who over the 18 years, every summer in June, were present at this AMIS conference. The AMIS conference developed in conjunction with the AMIS Journal, which gradually became a journal with international recognition ensuring the possibility of publishing the most important papers of AMIS conference. In addition, the volume of the conference was indexed in ISI Thomson Web of Knowledge, which made this conference more interesting. Thank you very much, Nadia Albu, for your contribution in developing the AMIS journal. Last but not least, I want to thank the organizing committee, which has not changed much comparing to the one in 2005, in the first edition. Starting with Mrs. Dean Liliana Ionescu-Feleagă, continuing with Nadia and Cătălin Albu, and Dana Boldeanu, Madalina Dumitru, Raluca Gușe, Dragoș Mangiuc, Mirela Nikita, and Maria Sândulescu. Good luck for your presentation and enjoy your stay in Bucharest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Năstase. You are an inspiration for all of us, and you are the reason why we are all here. So thank you for everything that you did for us. Then, on behalf of the university, I'd like to invite Professor Alina Dima, full professor and vice rector of research, development, and innovation of our university, to welcome the participants.
Dear Professor Pavel Năstase, dear Professor Dean Liliana Feleagă, dear guests, dear participants, dear invited guests from abroad, dear students, I'm very glad and honored to be invited to the opening session of the 18th International Conference on Accounting and Management Information System. It's a great number, great age. Organized by the Faculty of Accounting and Management Information System within our university, Bucharest University of Economic Studies. On behalf of the board management of the university, I would like to welcome all the participants to this conference from our university, from national and international partner universities, and also congratulate them for choosing this conference as a driver for dissemination of their research results. First of all, because we consider that it's an important event, important scientific event of our university, which brings a lot of valuable papers, contributing to the scientific production of our university, contributing to the national and international rankings and other classifications and other reporting systems. Secondly, because we could say that AMIS, A-M-I-S, it's anyway a sort of brand. It's a solid brand, a solid name among all the, let's say, more than 30 international conferences that we have in the Bucharest University of Economic Studies. And this is because of the long tradition in organizing of this conference, but also to the number and qualitative papers of this conference. We really appreciate the number of the papers, but also the quality of the papers, and more, I would say, international collaboration for various papers of this conference. So more than 50%, if I'm not wrong, there are with international collaborating international co-authors, which is a good thing because this provides grounds for further collaboration for various projects and other international papers or research projects. Also, we appreciate the fact that this conference has a volume proceedings, but also other partner journal, the journal of the faculty, a partner journal, contributing thus for increasing the number of published papers in various journals and creating opportunities for academic staff, but also for young researchers and assistants or lecturers. Actually, any conference is not just a conference, a scientific event, but also a network for collaboration, a forum for debate, and a tool for creating new ideas, innovative ideas for other further collaborations. We'd like to congratulate also organizing team for all the efforts in organizing this event, because we know that it's not a very simple issue. Of course, starting with Professor Liliana Feleagă, the Dean of the Faculty, Professors Cătălin Albu, Nadia Albu, and all the members of the organizing team, faculty members, and of course to all participants choosing to participate to this important event. I'm quite sure that this scientific conference will be another successful event of the faculty and also of our university. So good luck, and see you at next conference.
Thank you very much. We always appreciate how the university supports us very generously by providing the space and any other facilities, and then also the guidance and the sometimes all the facilities. On behalf of our school, I'd like to invite the Dean, Professor Liliana Ionescu Feleagă.
Dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you all to the 18th Accounting and Management Information Systems Conference. This year is a special year for the entire community of Bucharest University of Economic Studies. We celebrate together the 110th anniversary since the establishment of the first and most competitive University of Economics and Public Administration in Romania. We are proud of this seniority because it is the bright mirror of the efforts made by dozens of generations of teachers and thousands of graduates who have honestly served this country, its development, progress, and the well-being of its people. Regarding our conference, it is not difficult to remember that in 2006, when the first edition was organized, the Romanian academic environment looked different. Some of you who attended the early editions of the conference could probably testify about the incredible change and progress achieved over a short period. Our long partnership with the International Association for Accounting, Education and Research, as well as the ones with Big Four accounting firms and the ACCA, help us to find ways to support young researchers, develop a network with internationally reputed academics, and to bridge the gap between research and practice. However, we also seize the need for further improvement, and we keep on searching to find new ways to stimulate the development of research and teaching skill of academics in Romania and Central and Eastern Europe, the attendance of such staff to major accounting conferences, and the publication in relevant accounting journals. This is a long-term plan, and we are committed to continue to lead to the way in this direction. All of us observed how over the last decade, the academic environment changed. We are faced with a variety of rankings of journals, departments, and universities, rankings that influence students' choices, money allowances, and eventually the future of academics. There have been serious discussions worldwide about the way these rankings are set and their effect on academic behavior. However, we, as university managers, are also required to comply with this evolution in academia and to do our best efforts to ensure the best possible place for our university across various rankings. Since national and or international rankings are performed almost every year, there is pressure to comply with the short-term criteria of performance. Therefore, balancing the long and short-term objectives is a stringent need in the current environment. I am happy to say that our conference serves both purposes and contributes to our further development. To give you an example, Times Higher Education has released its ranking of the most international university in the world 2023, and our university is placed in a very good position among the universities in the region. Given the fact that some of the criteria used in the ranking are the international relationships and network, foreign visiting professors and international projects, as well as the partnership with the business environment, it is obvious that the long-term efforts invested in our conference helped our university in obtaining this position. More than that, our events set examples of excellent cooperation. The International Association for Accounting, Education and Research and the ACCA organized workshops in conjunction with the AMIS conference for several years already, and efforts start to pay off. We may now say that a group of young researchers in Central and Eastern Europe has started to create a network that hopefully will develop as the years go by. I would like then to thank all partners of our university, our faculty, and our conference, and we like to believe that our partnership has set a benchmark in the region for the cooperation between academia and the business environment. A word of thanks goes also to all the sponsors for their help and assistance in the arrangement of the conference. I am sure that all universities face the same challenges and feel pressure to develop research skills, enhance the relationship with practice, and increase relevant international visibility. Exchanging ideas and practices and attending conferences like ours help us in facing these pressures and making, as academics and university managers alike, the right choices. I therefore thank you all for being here, and I hope that our efforts will have contributed to a good conference experience. Thank you.
As has been mentioned before, two of our longest partners are ACCA and IAAER, and these names have been already mentioned a couple of times. So I would like to ask Andreea Stanciu on behalf of ACCA Southeast Europe now, I think that's the latest denomination, to welcome the participants.
Thank you very much. I'm always beyond honored to be speaking here. I still remember when I was in the first year of university, sitting somewhere around that area and being very nervous about the opening of the university year. So you can understand that accounting has been deep in my heart and soul, and I'm so glad that I'm representing ACCA, who is very fortunately for us a traditional partner for such events. And as has been mentioned, it is not only the conference that we are partnering in, but also the doctoral researchers workshop, which has also been a tradition for quite a few years. And I think it's so relevant to have such discussions with young academics, because we're always talking about attracting young people to the profession. And I know that we are discussing a lot with employers about this. But it's also important to attract young academics to teaching the future generation of professionals. So in ACCA, we are very proud to have very close ties with the academia, with individual universities, with IAAER, I am even more honored because here we have the initial founders of this event, Professor Pavel Năstase, Professor Donna Street, Professor Catherine Schipper, and so many others who have joined along the way. And it's such a joy to see young faces as well, new faces in this event because of their efforts and their vision to put this event together and to also pass the flag forward to grow and to promote such events. On our behalf, as I said, we have many projects with universities. I'm very happy that ASE is a champion here in Romania in what partnering with the ACCA is concerned. So we have all the projects that we offer universities, accreditation, we have blended courses, we have some research participation in joint roundtables of discussion, and I'm very happy that I see this proactivity in also attracting the business environment. At global level as well, I'm happy to note that ACCA is working, is strengthening our cooperation with IAER, and I'm happy that from here, from Romania, I can also contribute a little bit to this international overview. I congratulate all of you. I also congratulate the organizing team, who I know has put a lot of effort into the event. Enjoy the 2 days, and as it is all about partnership and always about partnership, I'm really looking forward to more and bigger and better projects together, because this is the 18th edition. It started very well anyway, because I remember almost all of them besides one or two, and somehow it got better along the way, regardless of how well it started. So thank you very much, and looking forward to new and enhanced cooperation.
Thank you, Andrea. You are always a lovely team here, a small team covering with a big heart and covering a big region now. So we appreciate very much your support and always cooperation. And as has been mentioned before, IAAR is one of the initiators of the conference, and on behalf of IAAR, I'd like to invite Professor Elizabeth Gordon, the president of the association.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I am honored to be here on behalf of the IAAER, the International Association for Accounting, Education, and Research, and humbled by the kind words that have been spoken today of the organization, its mission and its history here with the conference and the university. This has been a tremendous collaboration, a true partnership over the years. And we've collaborated in many ways and in many different forms to help support the conference and the scholars in the region. And most recently this year, with the launch of the IAAER ACCA Early Career Researchers Development Workshop that was launched here on Monday and Tuesday as a pre-conference workshop for young scholars. And here are in the audience and in the conference participating are the 15 young scholars from Central and Eastern Europe. And I hope you will welcome them as they join this conference and continue their development as educators and support them in their journeys. And thank you for the support in this and organizing and hosting these young researchers and scholars. As I said, IAAER has collaborated in many ways over the years with the university, and we are so pleased and happy to be able to support them and be here today. I know that you are looking forward to the conference, and I know I am the last speaker before the keynote, and we are looking forward to that, so I will keep my words short. But again, we're honored to be here. and truly honored to be part of the premier conference in the region and help establish that and see that grow to where we are today. So thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Professor Garden. So you have seen a lot of these names on the slides going up and in a lot of these photos that remember what we have done over the years. And one of the other names that you have seen is KPMG, always a great partner of ours. And I'd like to also welcome Sherban, who was one of the originator partner in crime with us to start this, to say a few words. And yeah.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm quite surprised, actually, to have the opportunity to have a few words at the beginning of this conference. I have not prepared anything, so I'm curious to see what I'm going to come up with. I just wanted to say it's great to see you here, Professor Nastasia. It's a pleasure. Andrea, for such a long time, Professor Feleagă, Professor Albo, and I see Donna here as well. Robert is like, you know, old friends. It's really nice to see you once again after a long time. There were a few things happening in between. We had the pandemic, we had other things as well, but AMIS is going on, and it's great. And I don't even remember when was the first time I've been here. It's been a while in my previous capacity. I was always very, very pleased to support this conference. I thought it was really a great opportunity for the company, you know, to be here and present. And since then, we had some, I would say, some milestone. We have came up with this concept of KPMG professor, and we had Professor Nastasia and Professor Albo. I was really honored to be involved in that. Even more than that, I remember my first piece of academic work was written with Professor Albu, and I just checked on ResearchGate. We have quite a lot of views on that piece, Catalina. It was on bridging the gap between academia and practice. It has always been my interest in bridging this gap, because what I noticed as a practitioner, in the meantime, I wanted to say that I also finished a doctorate, so I'm in between the two worlds now, so I know a little bit about this world and the other world. And what I noticed is that sometimes these two worlds do not speak to each other. When you are a practitioner, you don't really have time to read those long academic papers. And I think it is a pity, because I could see treasures among these papers. I also attended a few other conferences. For instance, I remember going to Firenze, going to Cyprus in 2019 and attending panels. I think it is my job in a way to make this known to the practitioner world, and I'm also now in process of initiating an institute. We call it the Future of Leadership Institute, which has as one of the major tasks is just this bridging the gap between the two worlds. So other than that, I'm really pleased to be here. It's great to see you. You look good. It's everybody. It's yeah. Thank you very much. So anyway, I wish the best to the conference, and I look forward to attend some of the panel and of course the dinner tomorrow night. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherban. It's been always a pleasure to work with you and KPMG, and we also have another rep of KPMG US here, Holger. Hello. Thanks for your support and collaboration with IAAR and us as well. And Sherban, you can challenge Robert to a golf game. He, yes. All right. So to conclude this opening ceremony, what we will do over these 2 days, after we finish, which is momentarily, we will have the opening address by Professor Robert Pfaff right here, and then we will have a short break, and we will have the plenary panel moderated by Professor Catherine Shepard right here. And for all the other scientific events after lunch, we will move to our regular third floor in the same building, right? Then we will have lunch both days, again in the Chichosky cafeteria, so you will need to change a little bit the room. The usual setting is that we go there for lunch and then we go for coffee and dessert upstairs because we need to clear the cafeteria as usually. And as mentioned by Sherban, tomorrow we have a gala dinner and we would like to, we hope that you will join us in celebrating and having a nice party. Then as Betsy and Andrea mentioned already, this is the third day of work for us. We have already had 2 days in which 15 scholars from Central and Eastern Europe have been trained and have been interacting with 12 esteemed international academics to further their research capacities, and they will be enrolled in a cohort for 2 years. So we hope that this program will yield very good results. I would also like to mention that we have, of course, sponsors for the conference, the platinum ones, KPMG, and of course, ACCA. Gold sponsor, Deloitte and Chekar, and silver sponsors, ThoughtWorks and Novium, and we'd like to thank them very much, all of them. And I will also say a few thanks to the organizing committee, so Nadia, Dana Boldeanu, Madalina Dumitru, Liliana Ionescu Felegă, Raluca Gușă, Dragoș Manjuk, Mirela Nikita, and Maria Sandulescu. Yeah, as you have noticed on the slides, we turned 18. So now the question is what? And we don't know, right? So if you have any thoughts, just, you know, let us know what you think we should do. But before we do that, a last reminder is that next year we will grow a little bit bigger in the sense that we will have a little bit of more participants attending the 46th edition of the European Accounting Association International Congress. So we hope, we think that we'll have more than 1,000 people, academics from around the world, populating Bucharest with their interesting research. And of course, the deadline is set to December 1st, and I'd like to encourage you highly to consider submitting papers and attend this event next year. All right, with that, I will end this opening ceremony. I'd like to thank you for attending this, and I'd like to thank all the speakers for warmly inviting us to the sessions. And of course, I'd like to welcome Robert to address his thoughts, reflections on a 10-year journey of his tool that he actually thought about right here 10 years ago. So thank you very much, and yeah, Robert, you're next.
While Catalin's setting up, look, I'm really excited to be here. It's been a long time. I don't want to mention why it's been a long time. We know that that doesn't need to be said. But congratulations to Catalin, Nadia and the team. It's just a fabulous event and a great history of this conference. It's always been on my calendar, and it's just wonderful to be back here, and just to echo the thanks to the long-term partners and collaborators of the conference that obviously we wouldn't get to the 18th edition without the strong support of IAAER, ACCA and KPMG as well along the way. So thanks very much, Catalin, for hearing my begging to you to let me speak to the group today. You know, this is my spiritual home. I think this is my spiritual home, Romania, and I think as I've come to this conference many times before and met a lot of fantastic people and fantastic scholars from the Central and Eastern European region, I just feel that entire region is my spiritual home. So there are a lot of old friends here, and there's some new friends, and really, it's more than just friends. I really see you, and it's going to sound corny, and I apologise, your family to me, and it's just a great pleasure and honour to be here with you. So, the good news, although for some of you it could be the bad news, my talk is not going to have any technical content. That's going to come very, very quickly, and we've got some fantastic items on the agenda and panels, and I think there'll be a strong flavour of the technical stuff there. So I apologise to you if you're hoping for technical stuff from me. I think most people will be relieved there isn't technical stuff, but that doesn't mean I can relax, although I feel very relaxed. I need to make sure that in the next 40 minutes that I give you some insight, and hopefully an interesting insight and narrative about what I've been doing, well, not just the last 10 years, but I sort of see the last 10 years as just the continuation of the prior 30 or so in academia and being an academic. So when I reflect on what this talk is about, I'm a bit uncomfortable. And the reason is, I think what you could very quickly decide is that this story is an obsession, There may be some other words you could use in the English language, but, you know, obsession is not a very positive word in English, right? If you were obsessed, I mean, you can put a positive spin on it, and I guess that's probably what I'm going to try and do, but I feel I have been obsessed, and I continue to be obsessed. And what I'd like to try and remind myself is this is the bright side of obsession, if there is any such thing, in that you sort of see something going forward and something grows, and then you sort of stick with it, and hopefully it's worthwhile, and you see evidence that it's worthwhile. So, as I said, I'm a little, well, put it another way, I would hate for anyone to see what I'm about to unravel here as some sort of model of an academic career. I think, you know, perhaps the easiest thing to say to any young scholars in the room is actually look for the broad sort of thing that I've done is probably avoid doing that, because it's not, you know, particularly at an early time in your career, because I don't think it's really going to enhance your career, although a big part of me actually thinks opposite to that. Now, there's a whole bunch of PowerPoints here. Many of these I'm going to flick through reasonably quickly, because I just want to give you a flavour of this 10-year retrospective, and I'm happy for these slides to be shared right across the board, and I'm reasonably confident that when it's time to finish, there won't have been much opportunity for Q&A. Not that I would expect that there would be much, but I'm happy to chat to anyone about this offline afterwards. So there's 10 things here, and, you know, I've break every rule to begin with. Why would you have 10 things on a slide? But, you know, to me, you know, already we're getting the theme of the obsession. So I'm going to say a little bit about the beginnings, which Catalin has already reminded me of and alerted you of. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about pitch scenario classification, later generation PRF tools. So PRF is the acronym that I've sort of developed for the pitching research framework. And there's a little bit of a brief story I'll tell you about that. Other PRF applications, PRF events and initiatives, PRF and responsible and open science, which is something I've sort of embarked upon fairly vigorously in more recent years. The SSRN is sort of an outshoot of that. Developing a website and a pitch creator portal. Micro-credential course is a fairly new initiative, and then just thinking about global impact. So, you know, I'm out of breath going through that, and already, if you didn't think it was an obsession before I mentioned that word, you're already probably convinced by that. Now, this exhibit's not meant to convey anything except that, so there's a timeline there that you can't read, but it's basically 2012 on the left, and then it goes through the years through to 2021, which was when I created this figure, and I was just trying to map different things and initiatives I'd done, and the yellow sort of annotation there is sort of this conference in 2013, which was the tangible genesis of this framework. And I momentarily thought about updating this, and then I thought that would be a bit of a waste of time, but I just wanted to give you a feel for when you do a retrospective in some sense, you think about it in terms of a timeline. So it was 2013 when, by that stage, I'd been to the conference for several years, and I was enjoying very, very much the pre-conference piece that we've heard reference to a few times now. Not to say that I didn't enjoy the whole conference, but the paper development workshop. And I was, as many of the participants, and actually I should just divert for 1 second, one of the reasons I'm here, the biggest reason I'm here is my very, very good friend who's not here, Professor Alan Hodson, and he desperately wanted to come, and there are good reasons why he, in the end, had to pull out of the trip, but he passes on his best wishes and apologies. But when he was Dean at Amsterdam Business School, we kept in contact. We've known each other for 40 years now, and he said, and he knew my background, so I won't bore you with my family details, but basically my parents were born in Romania, and he knew that, and he'd already met Pavel, and it was those early days, and I think it was either 2007 or 2008, and he said, "You've got to come to this conference in Romania. You'll really like it. They're lovely people, and they see a vision for a way forward in terms of accounting research and accounting academia." And I recall meeting Catelyn at the EAA in Rotterdam, and it was either 2007 or 2008, and within a very, very short space of time, I felt that this was something that I really needed to do, and I'm so pleased that happened. Anyway, diverting back to my little retrospective. So many of you in the audience would have seen this, some may not have. I'm not going to dwell on it because it would just divert and take too much time, but it's a simple framework. There's no genius here. There's nothing that we haven't seen before. The items down the left-hand side, there are 11 of them. It's not to say that this is not a unique way of trying to think about how to do research, but for me, when I had to do the presentation in 2013 to the PDW Paper Development Workshop group of students, well, early career researchers, I should say, and I can't recall exactly what I was asked to talk on, but it's often closely aligned with the theme of, well, how do you start research? How do you go about communicating your ideas and the like? And I'd been sort of tossing around the idea of trying to put all these things together in some way that would be helpful to an early career researcher that is sort of at the beginning, and for many it's like just totally lost, totally, and I'm probably overselling this now, but just nowhere, overwhelmed and in need of some simple tools. So here it is, working title, basic research question, key papers, motivation, idea data tools, what's new, so what, contribution, other considerations. And so it was born then, and there's many things that I could say, but they're all sort of documented, so I won't say too much, but a key goal here was not just to sort of have what seemed to me a pretty nice collection of items that would sort of do the job, but emphasise that if you want to communicate, you need to learn the talent and the skill of being succinct and I feel like a hypocrite on that score because, you know, my whole existence seems to be one where I'm just not succinct. I can't, you know, we all, you know, it's so much easier to say 1,000, you know, to say 10,000 words or write 10,000 words than it is to write 1,000. And this was born out of a bit of frustration on my part because I've, like many people, I'm not unique in terms of if you're in academia long enough and a researcher, you're going to supervise students. And I just became incredibly frustrated by being swamped by just too much stuff. I won't say it was necessarily information, and then the sort of the demand of trying to provide some meaningful response and feedback, particularly the way I thought of it is I'm in a half an hour meeting with a student and they've given me 50 pages to read but just before the meeting, and it's sort of like it's just going to be a waste of time. So it seemed to me, and you know, no rocket science here, you've got 1,000 words, you know, no science to back this up. I've got no evidence to say this is the magical number. It's just my sort of feel that that's, you know, any more than that and big time more than that, and you're starting to lose the benefit. If you go too much under that, then you're not giving yourself a chance to communicate to an expert in the field. And that's the other thing to emphasise here. This is not about what turns out to be a very important similar communication exercise, which is to communicate to industry, and I really like, you know, and I'll come back to where I see sort of the real world in industry playing in sort of this bigger journey that I've been on. So, you know, that's an incredibly important talent in terms of using different language to convey what often will be technical content, but that's not what I'm interested in here. You've got to communicate. Before you get to that point, if you're not able to communicate with your peers and your mentor, your research mentor or supervisor, you're behind the 8 ball, as we would say. So it's a big disadvantage. So 1,000 words, be clear, focused, meaningful, effort-based, connected, and don't aim for perfection. Just aim to start a conversation. And if it's a meaningful conversation, you're going to get the feedback so much more quickly and effectively and efficiently than you otherwise would. So in those early days, it was, I referred to it myself as it was a template, and that seemed a nice, convenient reflection of what it was. And as sort of the days unfolded, as I gave many talks on this, and a while ago, I sort of lost interest in tracking who and where, but it was already at that stage over 300 times, 300 different venues, a lot of them in person, but over the last few years, obviously, they were online. And it was suggested to me that the concept of a template, which it is, can undersell what you're really trying to do here. And to give you a feel for this, and I still hear these terms today where I'm told, oh yes, we filled in your form, or we filled in the sheet, or whatever. And okay, I shouldn't get too sensitive about that, but that seemed to me to risk misunderstanding what we've got here in terms of an iterative item that's really, you know, and there's no rocket science in that, and everyone's used, you know, sort of recursive ways of improving your ideas, not just in research, but, you know, anything that we work on. We know that we can't get to the point we want to immediately. So then I sort of transitioned into referring to it much more strongly as a tool, and then more recently it sort of just occurred to me, and, you know, maybe I'm overstepping the line to sort of refer to it as a framework, but I wanted to distance from the template form or sheet. So it went to the pitching research framework. So the sort of short way of thinking of it in my mind is connecting emerging scholars with research mentors, but expert research mentors. So there's much more, you know, blood, sweat and tears in the SSRN paper that is sitting there and has had a few lazy downloads. All right, so when things evolved early on, and I was thinking about how I could use this in the classroom, particularly, well, I guess almost exclusively to PhD students, but, you know, there are research students that in different jurisdictions come in a little bit earlier than at the PhD level. And I've highlighted in yellow what to me is the main game, which is to give a tool, a framework to allow communication between an early career researcher and a research mentor, an expert in the field, a prospective personal pitch. But it didn't take long for me to think about and in fact get feedback from those that I was talking to, that there were sort of other ways of thinking about this and using it, which in and of themselves would be valuable, but then could be great stepping stones to that ultimate, which is the prospective personal pitch. And so an obvious one is to use it on existing papers as a reverse pitch exercise. So read a paper, and we all read papers, obviously, we take notes, and this is just a structured then format that you can look for the information, which should be there. Sometimes it doesn't knock you straight in the face, but it should definitely be there. Now, what I found in sort of talking to students about this was, well, they could possibly see the value of it, but it was very easy to deliver something like this. And, it's pretty boring, dry, gee, what, let's just go through this form, this sheet. Let's just sort of start at the top, go to the bottom, and then we're finished, and Ray, we can run away. And what I use quite successfully, and my favourite actually, is what I call fantasy pitching. So it's still ex ante in feel because, well, it's fantasy, so the research doesn't exist, but it's hypothetical. And what I encourage students to do is have some fun. And, thinking of ChatGPT, which I've played around recently, it hallucinates, and it's got, I've already got an idea of how that could easily now seed a really interesting session where I say to the students, okay, use ChatGPT, the chatbot, to come up with a hypothetical sort of pitch, and then in teams sort of work on that. And the thing about the chatbot is it hallucinates, so it's going to come up with fake articles all the time. I'm still sort of trying to nail how to convince it should find real papers rather than inventing what seem to be very realistic. So in terms of that reverse pitching tool, I just changed the framework a little bit. So other considerations, you can pretend to think, well, what other things that aren't covered in the 10 items might be relevant to a paper that already exists. And, that exercise does have some sort of value, but in the end, what I suggest to the students is, well, tell me what the 3 key findings are. And then, as I remember it now, there's sort of 2 versions of this as well. You can do a passive version of summarising an article and not let your mind wander as to what critique you might have of the article. But the critiquing version of this can be quite helpful as well. It's not to say you would critique on every one of these items, but certain papers we read, you could have a critiquing element in there. So in terms of some of the SSRN papers that have this reverse engineering theme, there's this one that was a pitching research light that a student some time back, Bao Nguyen, was sort of lead on, which is a good exercise in itself. So he actually he was pre-PhD and came to my office one day and said, I really want to do research. And it just seemed to me, I've got this thing. So I sort of sent him off, read the paper, and then a little bit down the track, he led the charge on this. So you can't see this, but it just what was here to remind me that the sort of thing you can do is take iconic papers, and so this won't be everyone's cup of tea or iconic paper. For quantitative researchers, and particularly Australian focused researchers, Ball and Brown is pretty up there. So this is basically an exercise I did some time ago of just summarising Ball and Brown in terms of the framework. And we did a language-based exercise with a reverse engineering flavour to it. These days this is not so interesting because we know that language translation translation bots are pretty good, and there's a reverse engineering sparring one, and there's quite a number of fantasy pitching papers that I put on, which were basically just illustrative of the examples that came out of the classroom situation. In terms of later generation PRF tools, there's a few things that have happened, and I realise there's one that I've omitted, and in a way it's possibly the most important one that I've omitted. And the reason it's important, it wasn't something that I developed. It was Sumit Lodhia in Australia, and Sumit is a qualitative researcher, and there are a lot of, there was quite a bit of feedback early on, and continues to be from qualitative researchers that, yeah, you quantitative people, you know, you just think this way, and it doesn't work for qualitative. And I would sort of have these debates. In fact, we had a debate in our local journal with Sumit about, you know, I wasn't trying to make the case, yeah, you could, you know, don't feel too hemmed in by the labels I used. Anyhow, Sumit developed a very similar framework, but just changed up. You know, instead of idea, data and tools, there was theory and I think context and something else. And I should have mentioned that here, but what I've worked on in terms of these later generation ones, so what I've called 2GA, so a second generation, is the pitching research for engagement and impact. And this is sort of a growing trend, I think, right around the world. Australia's probably actually not at the forefront, but we certainly, and maybe Europe is, and has been, in terms of just getting researchers to think more than in a passing way, what engagement with industry or outside of academia, and potentially what impact it might have. And of course, well, with impact, it definitely presents some challenges when you're trying to get a handle on what impact you could claim, you know, so just think of causality or that sort of thing. So I did a paper, and now I'm claiming that paper, unless it's there's a demonstrable link, but you know, often, of course, in fact, mostly the research we do, unless we're Nobel Prize winners, we're sort of part of the wave of research at any given time. So with a colleague at UQ, I sort of said, and he had great experience in innovation and sort of the management side of the business school at UQ. Tim Castell is his name, and I said to Tim, so here's the tool I've got, which isn't a scholarly tool. I'm thinking that there's something, a companion tool, that one could associate, you know, have as a secondary tool or framework that once you've bedded down or convinced you've got a scholarly base, and that's really important in my mind, because you can have engagement and impact without research, as I would define it. Scholarly base, and then what are the additional things you could sort of put in place that would be helpful for the appropriate situation where you're trying to make a link to industry, and you know, this is not everyone's cup of tea. It's not, you know, there's plenty of topics that it wouldn't work for, but in accounting, of course, there's plenty of topics that it naturally works for. And you might say, well, do we need a tool for that? And experienced researchers, no, probably not. For those that are much earlier in their career, my argument would be, well, rather than just hope things work out, you know, just think, I'd like to do something that has sort of impact down the track, and you know, serendipity sort of comes into play, and then it happens, and then and then we have these exercises where we ask people, well, what have you done that's actually had impact? So it's all, to me, it's I nearly don't want to use a colloquial term, which is a bit offensive, but it's back to front. And so my view always sort of is, well, if we can front-end thinking and planning and be strategic, if this is something that really interests you in terms of engagement and impact, then what guidance could we give? So that was sort of what we attempted to do. And then a little, you know, relatively recently, I sort of, and I'm not, this is, well, it was an interesting exercise. The third generation was basically to take the first two and then say, well, if, and it's almost not relevant to any of us, really. I mean, who's the last person that you know that commercialised something in accounting research? But anyway, there's a commercialisation one as well. And much more recently, and it's really just another example of a second generation, and there are several collaborators in the room where I put to a range of people, why not use this framework to think about how you could portray yourself as a researcher as opposed to a specific item of research? You know, would that work? And let's just sort of humour me for a bit. Let's try it out. And so we're sort of down the path on that. The sort of, so there's the engagement. So there's plenty of SSRM papers that I've written to back this up, just to sort of say, well, you know, here's, you know, blood, sweat and tears around this. So the engagement impact one, there's a commercialisation one, but the researcher profiles one, so I put this paper out, and, you know, it's not incredibly long, and, you know, you would say not greatly interesting and not that different from the original, but just trying to make a case for, you know, conveying you as a researcher to your colleagues, potential researchers or whatever. And then we're in the middle of revising with a number of co-authors now, because all the co-authors are providing, well, two main items, their personal researcher pitch and then a reflection on that. And I learned something over the last couple of days that thanks to Sebastian, that we're engaging here in its auto-ethnographic approach to research, and I never ever thought I could sort of make that claim, and, you know, in a strange way, but a very happy way for me. I'm excited about that. So Sebastian, Catalan, and a part of that team, as well as Raluca Ratchu, who I met at this conference, I believe, or maybe, yeah, no, at this conference, I can't remember what year, and just like a little plug for her in that she was at that 2013 PDW session, and I think listened quite attentively to the talk I gave on this tool. So fast forward to about, it was 7, 8 months later, and, you know, if I'd thought about it at the time, I would have been depressed that no one contacted me. So it's sort of like, is there a signal there? That, and then, she, you know, unsolicited, she sends an email and said, oh, I've used your tool, and can you have a look at it? So I did, and that actually I see as, you know, had a, well, catalyst is probably not the right word, it's more direct, really then gave me impetus to move on. So, you know, here's just an extract from Sebastian's where, you know, there's a minor variation of the items, so a research bio title, research question themes, so now as a researcher, and then signature key papers. So we see here Sebastian is, I guess, you know, portraying, and I'll get this wrong, multidisciplinary, or is it interdisciplinary perspective, but themed very strongly with accounting. So we're in the middle of that. Other PRF applications very quickly, there's pitching research letters that JAMIS, the local journal, has embraced and published quite a number of these. So currently, I've not got a total handle on this, but over 30 in JAMIS. Accounting and Finance published 3. Accounting Research Journal, which is an Australian-based journal, has published 7+. And there's a couple of quick examples. And I even sort of thought along the journey, so I'm obsessed, right? So the problem with this is everywhere you look, you see something that you think will work, and, you know, to some extent it does, and maybe in other ways it's sort of just a little bit of an overindulgence. But there's a journal, I went to Serbia a few years ago and gave one of my talks there, and I met an editor of a local journal, which is basically called Management, with this big, you know, colon and a big lot of stuff after that. But the focus is Central and Eastern Europe, but most of the papers, wouldn't surprise you, that are looking at the Serbian context anyway. I came up with some students actually, undergraduate students at UQ. I said to them, I've got this idea. I'd sort of taken them through the PRF sort of training, as it were, and I said, I've got this idea. I'd like you to help me design a simpler version that you could use as an abstract. And actually, this came out of their work. So you can't read it there, but I've highlighted in yellow. There are just little headings in there that basically pick off several of the items. I've already mentioned a bit about playing around with the chat bots, and there's one that I played around with, Chat PDF, and I threw it at one of my old papers, and no details here. It was giving, I think there's a few things. It gives superficial answers, but even though they're superficial, they sort of make sense. So I'm not claiming any great thing here, and I'm going to continue playing around with it. And it's a little terse. You know, I tell the chatbot, use 1,000 words, and it comes back with 450, and then I get grumpy with it, and then it comes back with 455. But it hallucinates. So it's just come up with key papers here that aren't in the paper. Other things, you know, that have kept me occupied is I've thought, well, what events or initiatives can I do? And so just quickly, I embarked on, you know, what everyone in the room probably says is crazy, but we did a global pitching research competition last year. We had over 300 entries from around the world. It was very popular in Vietnam. So Vietnam, almost a third of the entries. It's just the way it is. Like, you know, it's not a representative of the population of the world of novice researchers, but it was then no surprise that the overall winner was judged by an international panel based on an online, well, initially based on a written version and then an online presentation. And it was no surprise. The winner came from the Vietnam cohort, so Mike Nguyen. And what we've, you know, so if that wasn't crazy enough, you know, it's a bit of effort to do things like this. We've launched a new version of it. So one of the challenges here, there's prize money, so I've got to go with cap in hand to try and raise enough funds to cover the prizes. But if anyone's interested, I can talk later about the competition, and that's too hard for you to see, but basically I've got about 25,000 Australian dollars in a pool, of which 5,000 Australian is dedicated to the overall winner of the competition. Other things that I've played around with, and I find, you know, that many of these, well, you don't continue doing them unless you think they work and they're sort of interesting. And one of these is shark tanks. And I've got one that's in play right now and will be executed, as it were, in terms of what I think is step 5 of this sort of little design in Norway at the World Finance Conference, so the beginning of August. So I'm looking forward to that. But we had an aborted attempt at doing this, the EAA 2020. COVID obviously knocked us out. We were at the sort of pointy end of, we had journals on board, we had a bunch of papers, you know, scholars that had put papers in to be part of this Shark Tank. And very quickly, if you're probably thinking, what do you mean by Shark Tank? So the idea is pretty simple. You get in one room a bunch of editors of journals, and the editors of journals have bought in to some extent, I wouldn't say uniformly and strongly, but they bought into the idea that they're going to listen to research being pitched using the framework, and those that have really bought in would be actively in the room, willing to not sign up with no review process going forward, but say, I like your paper, I think we can do something here, no guarantees or whatever. So it was up to the journal editors. And I've got the green light to run with this again next year. And already I've got 3 journals on board, because I've had the opportunity to talk to, well, the first one, Pacific Basin Finance Journal, is myself, so it's pretty easy to talk to me. But also Andre and Yanis sort of on board for this. And, you know, last time when we planned it, we had, if I remember, probably about 10 journals, and we're really keen to get a broad cross-section of journals, including qualitative journals. So tried really hard, and I can't remember how, so some journals are a sort of bit of a mix of quant and qual, and we're going to go down that path again and hopefully get a little bit of buy-in right across the board. And I've also had this initiative of what I call pitch mentoring, and it's been into a few jurisdictions. So a theme here for me is trying to use, certainly over COVID, you have to do these things online, which aren't incredibly exciting the whole way through if you've got to be there for many hours. But a lot of this can happen offline, so into Vietnam, India, South Africa, the Walter Sisulu University, and then a little bit also with the African Accounting Finance Association. So the idea, very quickly, is that there's a few stages that they've got to go through, the young scholars have got to go through, and the reason, apart from thinking they might get benefit along the way, is that they end up doing a personal pitch, and then for the winners, they then are teamed up with an expert, as good as I can find, an expert in the field, to then mentor them over a period of a couple of months, although that's sort of the initial. If it goes further, even better, and if it leads to some sort of research collaboration, even better still. So we've just, the most successful one of these, and we've just had the first cohort at Walter Sisulu, so we're talking small numbers. We had 11 get through to sort of the main phase, and then of those 11, we got the personal pitches in. I then had a look at those, and they were joint winners. So William Vambay was sort of the inaugural joint winner of that little exercise. As I alluded to previously, and I know time's just about out, but I've really tried to think, well, there's certain things that worry me about where we are in the research space these days, about how reliable research is, etc., and it's sort of, even personally, a little bit of kicking and screaming, but not really, but a little bit of really, because we come with baggage. We come with, well, this is the way you do research right now, and we know that process of submitting to journals, getting reviews. You do all the work. You may get a little bit of feedback along the way. You go to a conference, but it's already a product. And what I worry about, particularly with quantitative research, is there's sort of questionable practices that can get in the way, and it's not like I want to point a finger at everyone, and it's sort of hopefully a small percentage, but it seems to me the most vulnerable in this space are the early career researchers. It's sort of like, well, just a very simple exercise. I want to get in the world's best journal, or even just a really good journal. Journals don't seem to, and editors seem to be interested in insignificant results or negative results, right? So you think, oh, okay, and I've got to get a publication to get to graduate or whatever. So it's easy to imagine that there's a bit of a bias there towards going that extra step or two to either p-hack or hark, hypothesise after the results are known, so that you can actually get your paper published. And that, it makes me feel uncomfortable a bit to talk about it, because I think and I've published too many things as part of my problem, but there are certain instances where I think, engaged in some sort of, at least low-level example of this, and that I'm not very proud of. And some of my proudest publications, and I won't have time to tell this story here, was where and it was more recently, we towed the line. We had to revise and resubmit at JCF. I can say the journal now, because if it got rejected later on, then it would be a bit more dangerous to talk about a journal. But it was a minor R&R on a finance topic, and what seemed to the reviewers as relatively mild things required us to do actually a whole bunch of new work, and of course that nightmare occurred where what was probably not, you know, it was just a result and it was statistically significant at the 5% level. It weakened, but to me, and this reminds me of what one of the things Catherine mentioned during the last 2 days, one of many good things, and that was it's not only about statistical significance, it's about the economic magnitude, and that can have a contextual flavour to it anyway. So, you know, she gave a very good example of a result which in one setting, and I won't recount the exact example, one setting was economically unimportant and another was highly economically important. So what happened with this paper was the result was still there, but it weakened. But when you looked at the economic importance, it was, well, you know, we were honest to say it's mild. And so I won't bore you with the details of the reply to the editor, but we basically appealed to sort of the view that I had, which was you thought our paper was, you know, the main reason you gave us the R&R, I believe, was you thought it was a pretty decent idea and that you had confidence in us executing it in a rigorous and reliable way, particularly in terms of the review process that we've been through and what we ended up with. Anyway, we won the day on that, and that was pretty good. Could talk a long time about responsible science, and this is just my take on that, and I'm pretty sure I'm out of time. You know, the elements of credible research, relevant research, which sort of ties back into engagement and impact, and being independent researchers. So there's a bunch of stuff there. I've sort of, in the journal that I edit, replication studies are now a thing. So we published somewhere in the vicinity of 40 replication studies. And the Pacific Basin Finance Journal, as of September last year, has as a thing, it's not a special issue, we are inviting a pathway of pre-registered reports and studies. So there's a series of phases, and I can talk to you later if you're interested, although it is a finance journal. So drill down in terms of different elements of the pitching research framework. So there's a bunch of other papers, you know, crazily. There's a website. There's links here if you're interested in different things, resources, etc., that we've been working on to really reach out to those regions around the world that have less resources and support. And then as part of this, I created the Inspires network, which has done pretty well. And then the most recent sort of crazy idea is to create a virtual centre of responsible science, of which several in the room are node leaders. So there's a micro-credential course which I could talk to you about if you're interested. And I'm just going to finish here on highlighting that in Europe, and in fact I should have highlighted, oh no, I've got Conrad, who I'm missing from the meeting today, and I guess many of you are at Krakow, but also Catalan here at the ASSO. So without any further ado, I think I should just be quiet now. Thank you for your attention. Hopefully you can see that what I said about an obsession is true, but that it's sort of the brighter side of that. I would certainly not recommend this as a model. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. And I just looked you up. Your age index seems to be in the 40s, and total citations over 7,000. So I think that you can trust what Robert has to say. All right, so I'll invite you very quickly to a very short break right outside, and we will be ready to begin our plenary panel in a little bit less than 8 minutes. So thank you very much and enjoy your break.